You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Brophy. And today, Roisin, we're delighted to be joined by our American correspondent, Adam DeRito.
Pleasure to be back, guys. A lot's gone on since we last talked.
He has, yeah.
Well, Adam, from the last time we talked, there's been an inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
There has been the confirmations. There has been a lot of international travel. There's been a lot of statements. But what we'll do is let's kick off, because you had an invitation, a personal invitation to attend the inauguration, and that's what we spoke about on the last interview. So tell us about the inauguration and the behind the scenes.
Oh, I mean, it was an amazing experience. I mean, I can't believe I even got the access that I was able to get. It was a huge privilege for me to be invited to the presidential inauguration. And there was some threats that were going on when I was out there. Everyone said it was because of the weather, but there was more of a terrorist threat that was going on. So that's why they decided to bring everything inside the rotunda for the congressional building, which was fine and much safer. Plus, it was really, really cold, and I don't think anyone wanted to stand outside in that miserable weather anyway. So yeah, I mean, I got to go to the North Carolina Society Ball. I got to go to the Black Conservative Foundation Ball with Wesley Hunt and Byron Donalds from Florida and Texas. And then after that, I got to go to the inaugural ball, which was an absolute privilege on top of that. And in between it all, I got to go to Arlington National Cemetery for a private ceremony with the president. And I got to meet Tulsi Gabbard and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump's family personally. So that was an absolute privilege and an amazing experience. And actually had like a 40-minute conversation with them. Like, it wasn't just a handshake and a hello. Like, we actually talked about policy and everything that's going on in the United States. And it was an amazing experience. And as you can see, our country is under massive transformation right now. And the liberals are kicking and screaming and can't handle it. And I love it. I love every second of it. The fact that, and the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that they have uncovered. And, that's my tax dollars. I've been paying into the system since I was 18 years old. And to see that we're buying, $50 million in condoms for Gaza, what are we doing right now? Or $20 million to do a transgender, opera play in Uganda. Like, what is going on right now? I think that's a massive misuse.
Well. And there was also a transgender concert here in Ireland that the US aid paid for.
Yes, exactly. What are we doing? And we're, making America first, making, America great again. And unfortunately, yeah, we have to take care of our country first. And we have plenty of issues here in the United States, and I do feel for a lot of our, allies and stuff, and they need help in other things, but the amount of money that we've been throwing away and wasting is insane. And I think we need to right the ship, because any normal corporation, any normal business, you would never run this way. If you caught your employees doing this, you would be fired instantaneously. And the biggest complaint from the Democratic Party right now is, well, Trump is getting rid of hundreds of thousands of jobs. And I'm like, no, we're just proving that we don't need hundreds of thousands of useless jobs getting paid out that aren't actually doing their job. It's like the guy from Office Space with the red stapler in the basement, like he's been on the payroll for 10 years and no one even knew that he was still working there. And that's the half of the federal government here in the United States. So.
Yeah, and President Donald Trump, he hasn't hung around. I believe he signed like 65 executive orders since inauguration day. So by the time this broadcast, by the time this maybe.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and he's going to keep signing even more of them. You know what I mean? Like, and that's one of his tactics right now, is that they're going to try to file lawsuits and they're going to try to do all this stuff against him to oppose the executive orders. But if I just keep signing more executive orders, you can't keep up in the court system, because our court system is so massively corrupt. So he'll just sign hundreds of executive orders, and by the time they get to the first one, we're already on number 500. So that's the strategy, is that this is a blitz tactic by the executive branch to actually get things done. And the judicial system and the congressional members, since they're so slow and so reactionary versus, being proactive, they can't keep up. And I think it's a great strategy. And yes, is some of it going to get tossed out eventually? Probably. But I mean, our border crossings are down 99% in just a few weeks. We were going from over 10,000 people a day to like 100, if that, right? So obviously the policies are working, and the American people, most of them, the Democrats and Republicans alike, are really excited because they're seeing, somebody actually trying to so-called drain the swamp and actually, holding the government accountable. And that's all the American people have asked for several administrations now.
And I think people over here in Ireland, and I think the media and the political establishment here in Ireland, because they are so far detached, and our referendums proved that last March, nearly a year ago.
Nearly a year ago.
there is an absolute the support that for the Trump administration, for President Donald Trump, the MAGA organization, the Trump force, is a lot bigger here in Ireland than what anyone talks about or is publicized. But when you're doing this in America, it's actually giving people over here in Ireland hope.
Yeah, I hope so, and I think this might even go into a discussion about what had happened when JD Vance went over, and spoke to the European Union and NATO or whatever.
Yeah.
He kind of called you guys out, not you per se, Ireland, but definitely Germany. Like you guys are arresting people for posting memes on the internet. What kind of Orwellian totalitarian system do you guys claim to be? You're supposed to be the beacon of democracy here, in Western Europe, and you are violating people's rights. And we talked about this in the previous podcast about these countries losing their culture, losing everything that makes your country what it's defined by. And I'm just glad somebody's being honest about it, and it's time to make Ireland Ireland again and make Germany Germany again. We've proven that if we can cut off the illegal immigration and the stuff that's taken away from our society, and to make sure that we are participating in our societies as citizens and not residents, that we can work more collectively together and rout out corruption and evil in the world. And we can do that together. But yeah, some people have to get fired. We're going to have to cut some funding, and we're going to have to rout out the corruption. And it's just way overdue. It's way overdue.
And our new Minister for Justice, Minister Callahan, he actually said yesterday on the radio, was it yesterday, Paul, or over the weekend, about, well, we've allowed too many immigrants into the country who are not vetted. That I can't quote him completely, but that's what he said. And that has to be looked into. So hopefully there's an overflow coming here in Ireland from the United States of America. So J.D. Vance, that was some speech. I mean,
Great.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and I'm just glad somebody just finally said the quiet part out loud, right? I mean, we've been asking for that for a long period of time. And then they even went over the NATO budget and all these other things. And it's like we're spending over $880 billion, and we're way over 50% of NATO's budget. And they want Ukraine resolved. They want all these things. And it's like, well, you're not doing your part. You're not doing anything. So, no offense, but World War II ended over 75 years ago. So either you guys figure it out, or we're going to start withdrawing our troops and bringing them back to the United States. And that upset a lot of people. And it's like, oh, wait, we're going to hold you accountable for establishing their own border protection for your own continent. Like, you can't get mad at us for that. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, the amount of money that we dump into Germany alone every year is insane. I mean, literally, we prop up the economy of several of those towns around those bases. And if it wasn't for us, half of that economy wouldn't exist. Half those German citizens wouldn't have jobs. Right. So it's either get with the program or we're just going to pull it. It's not that hard. And Trump's going to do it if they don't comply. And I think we discussed this in several podcasts beforehand, is that Trump will threaten military action, just like with the Panama Canal, just like with Greenland or whatever else. But at the end of the day, he is 99% going to form a business deal solution. Right. Yeah. And it's working. Right. It's like, well, we can either send 13 aircraft carriers to the Panama Canal, or you guys can sign a new deal and stop with China. And it's amazing how fast he's like, all right, so what do you guys, where do you want us to sign? Even with Greenland, it's like, well, we can just go there and take it by force, or you guys can, make a trade deal for rare earth minerals and, make a cooperative agreement. And Denmark's like, well, we can't even afford to compete with that. Well, good luck, And even with Canada, it's like,
yeah.
Even with Canada, it's like, well, Canada's our biggest trade partner with energy and with oil transfers and everything else. And either you guys start playing nice and start agreeing, or we're going to shut it down. And we're going to double tariff you guys. Same thing with Mexico. Either you help us stop these cartels, or we're sending in special forces to take care of it for you. So pick your poison. What do you want to do? And then, Canada booed us in our national anthem at the hockey game yesterday. And we started 3 fights in 9 seconds. So good luck.
9 seconds, because they didn't hang around. And even you mentioned the drug cartels, and one of Donald Trump's executive orders was to classify these drug cartels as terrorist organizations. So he is going after them big time.
Oh, that opens the door for a lot of things. When you classify things as a terrorist organization, and you let the 7th Special Forces Group, who's responsible for Southcom, and you let them off the chain, good luck. I think a lot of drug cartels are like, okay, this isn't just the Border Patrol, and this isn't just like the Texas National Guard. These are guys with very powerful weapon systems, and they've been waiting for this for like 30 years since the 80s. So, you might want to sit this one out, the cartels and the Sinaloa cartel. You might want to reconsider, because they're going to go after you, your family, and every generational, because it's fun for them. Like, this isn't difficult for them to do. This is literally what they exist to do. So.
And I think it was in the news there this week that in County Kerry there was a Mexican drug cartel seized in Kerry, not far from County Clare, where Trump Doonbeg is. But that was seized. So there is an overflow of all the cartels that are impacting Europe, Ireland and Europe. So that's really important that the drug cartels are curtailed. Along with this drug cartels, there's human trafficking, there's child trafficking, there's all sorts of corruption.
Yeah, and even like the Trump administration recovered 200,000 missing children within the first few weeks of his administration. You know, and a lot of this fentanyl is getting trafficked over from China to Mexico because it's easy for them to do it. And then these Mexican drug cartels, it's a lot easier for them to transfer fentanyl and its derivatives versus marijuana or cocaine, right? So he's sent a message. And like I said, in a way, we haven't even fired a shot yet in terms of military weapon systems. And we're seeing massive, drastic change, which just proves if you put the right people into power and you elect people who have no personal financial interest in this, because like I said, you can't pay off Donald Trump. You can't pay off Elon Musk. They are working for free. And I said the only other president next to Donald Trump to work for free was John F. Kennedy, and they assassinated him. Right? So yeah, and then they tried to assassinate Donald Trump twice, and that didn't work out too well for him, you know. And we're also seeing that he's going to declassify all the massive corrupt cases, you know, the JFK assassination, the RFK, the 9/11 files, the Jeffrey Epstein list. Like the entire system is going to come crumbling down. And I am just here, and I'm almost out of popcorn. I'm probably going to have to go back to the store and get some more. But most American people are loving this. I think a lot of moderate conservatives, even moderate liberals, are finally seeing that they've been manipulated for 20, 30 years. And now it's time to right the ship as best as we can for the next 3.5 years under this administration. So
you talked to Adam about the military and everything. Pete Hegseth, he has been really busy. He was on a jet plane, and he was over in Europe visiting the American troops in Europe. And he is so down to earth. He's so connected to what is happening on ground zero with the troops and with military. That actually puts Ireland to shame. That I actually, you know, there was Pete Hegseth out in the morning training with the troops, the soldiers. That I actually tweeted to Simon Harris, our Minister for Defense. You know, why don't you go out training with the Defense Forces? You know, it's.
Yeah,
he's out, you know, yeah. But
well, I mean, this is the point that's so important about why Pete Hegseth is such a good pick. And I met Pete. I talked with him for like 20 minutes at Arlington. He was only a captain in the Army Reserve when he got out, right? He wasn't a general, right? And this is probably one of the lowest ranking guys who'd ever put into the position of Secretary of Defense, right? But the good part about that is Pete Hegseth was in direct combat. He led actual combat troops. He's not disenfranchised with the system and the revolving door of the military defense industries like most of these generals who get picked up for these positions are. So this is the first guy that me, even as a soon-to-be officer here, I'll be at the same rank as Pete was when he got out, is we work with the troops directly, and we know what it's like on the ground. And to have somebody who understands that and is there for the troops and there to actually fight for the guys on the front lines, it's so much better than having a guy walk around in 2 COVID masks and a face shield and a bunch of fake medallions like Lloyd Austin was, because he was absolutely worthless. I mean, he was one of the worst Secretary of Defenses I've ever had to work for. And when I see Pete Hegseth out there running with 10th Special Forces Group out there in Germany and running with the guys in Poland and everything else, that's the kind of leader we want. Leading by example, leading from the front, and not just do as I say, do as I do.
Yeah.
And also, we talk about military, and I just think Tulsi Gabbard is going to be just an amazing, not just an amazing leader for America, but I think amazing leader for women, because women don't have women in leadership anymore. It's all been the fake, manufactured, selected to be elected influences. But I think Tulsi Gabbard, and I tweeted about that too, she's going to be a real inspiration for the younger generation of girls and women, but also for women of our age as well.
No, and like I said, I know Tulsi personally. I met her at Arlington as well. She was my boss previously, and there's so much uproar about the fake disinformation campaign that she was a Russian asset and she met with Bashir Assad. But it's like, yeah, of course she did. She was a congresswoman. She has every right to do that. She wasn't inundated with Russian propaganda. If anyone and I can't talk about a lot of these things. I've fought with so many people on the internet about this, but like, if you understand what's going on in Syria with the Russian connections and everything else, of course you're going to meet with the most powerful dictator in the Middle East to subdue the war, right? Especially when Russia is backing the Assad regime. And now it's kind of funny. We're not talking about Syria anymore. The entire regime failed. It's being taken over by a terrorist group, and magically it's out of the news cycle, right? We don't want to talk about how that has become a failed state because Bashir Assad is out now. And I'm not saying Bashir Assad's a good guy, but how Middle Eastern countries work is they only respond to dictatorships. They will never respond to a democracy. It's not a thing. The only state that's somewhat of a democracy out there is Israel, and even they have their issues, right? You can see the battles with Netanyahu and everything else. But Tulsi Gabbard has given the go-ahead that it's okay to not only be a strong, independent, successful woman, but also to be a feminine woman that is a mother and, you know, wants to raise kids. And you could still run around with a gun and do all those things and be a great wife at the same time. And I think that's such a good signal for the American women and also women internationally, right? Is that it is okay to be feminine and it is okay to be in a powerful position and do all those things to be a contributing member of society. And Tulsi is such a great pick. I'm so excited that she's in charge of our intelligence agencies because they are massively corrupt as well. We saw that with the false prosecutions, the hiding of the Hunter Biden laptop, and I'm so glad that all these people are losing their security clearances and getting out of the system. So,
And we also saw that with Edward Snowden as well.
yes, and that's going to be interesting. So, you know, there's two sides to this. Did Edward Snowden technically break the law and reveal classified information and had to run away to Russia to protect himself because he was going to get prosecuted by a corrupt U.S. government? Yes. But what he revealed was the fact that American citizens have been surveilled by the NSA, the CIA, the DIA for decades since the 9/11 Patriot Act was passed. And that's a violation of my constitutional rights. So although he did technically break the law, right, Edward Snowden unveiled a massively corrupt system that finally someone like Donald Trump's actually going to hold people accountable for. And with that knowledge, I fully support him being pardoned by the President of the United States and allowing him to come back to his family. I think that's the right thing to do, despite the fact that he did release classified information. But the classified information was the fact that my government that I elected was violating my constitutional rights. And they're just all mad that they're all going to get fired now. And I don't care. Fire all of them. Every single one of them.
Yeah. Wow. And Adam, you were also not only were you were at the inauguration, a big part of that was lobbying for the DeRito Act. For our listeners and our viewers who mightn't be fully familiar with it, could you give us could you remind us and how did everything go?
Yeah, it went really well. So I like I said, I talked with Pete Hegseth directly out there. I'm in contact with Matt Lohmeyer, who is the new pick for the Secretary of the Air Force. I'm waiting to actually meet him in person, and I'm going to go out to Washington, D.C. for his confirmation hearing and try to have a conversation with him. But the DeRito Act is basically, it makes it illegal in the U.S. military for any commander, NCO, or military personnel to retaliate against any member of the military for reporting sexual assault, misconduct, or harassment. Because currently under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is our separate law system for the U.S. military, it is not illegal for a commander to access these things and change these things around. And it has not only affected hundreds of thousands of members during COVID, you know, if you're a commander being able to go in there and change things around, but it's affected so many people who've been survivors of sexual assault and harassment. And, you know, I myself, as a survivor from the United States Air Force Academy, I take that personally. But the problem is, I'm a straight white male, and during the Biden administration, nobody cares, right? It's just I'm a guy, right? And what people don't understand is more men are actually sexually assaulted in the military per year than women. But men just don't talk about it because it's embarrassing. And over the years, over 15 years now of fighting for this, I'm not afraid to talk about my situation on numerous podcasts and news channels. And, you know, I've become the face front or the plate carrier for this and taking all the hits and getting publicly attacked and having my character assassinated. But if any of those things were true, I probably wouldn't be here. Right, I probably wouldn't hold the security clearance, and I probably still wouldn't be in the military, right? And it's so good to see that there is now an administration that is led by people in the military like Pete Hegseth and Matt Lohmeyer and Donald Trump that actually might make those changes. But I had a lot of good meetings. I met with Congressman Jeff Crank, Congressman Jeff Hurd, Congressman Gabe Evans, Lauren Boebert, several other offices, Seth Moulton's office, Marcus Luttrell. And you know, there's a lot of appetite now to actually change things in the military because previously elected members were very afraid to speak out against the military because it comes off as being anti-military when you're passing any types of laws in the military. But now there's a desire to eliminate corruption and actually have reform in the system. and there's more of an appetite for it. So we are very hopeful with my lobbyist, Lindsay Rowland, that we are actually going to get this act put into the National Defense Authorization Act this year. And like I said, I'll be back in D.C. numerous times over the next several months, during the lobbying season for that. But right now the Americans love the whole DOGE thing. They love the Department of Government, accountability or whatever it is, and that's very popular. So the one thing that Trump has not actioned yet, which all us veterans are waiting on, is accountability for Afghanistan. That's something he said he was going to do on day one, and he did not. Right. That, to be fair, he did not action that like he said he was going to. But right now he's playing the field. Whatever's very popular, he's going to continue doing. So I think this government efficiency department is going very well for him and the public, court of public opinion per se. And we're going to get to that. It might be another 6 months. It might be a little bit longer to get to the military accountability part. But I think once Elon starts auditing the Department of Defense, that's when we're going to see. You think, you thought USAID was bad. And if you thought the Internal Revenue Service was bad, just wait till they get to the military. The amount of money that we waste in the U.S. military is the GDP of most other countries. It's insane. So we're hoping that once there's a little bit more of an appetite to get to the more contentious issues, right? Like I said, he kept men out of women's sports. He's doing all the big things, all the things that most people are going to agree with. But he's going to wait till after his first 100 days in office to really start actioning the very contentious issues. So we're still hopeful for that, and we'll see how that goes over the next year. So
Yeah.
And also, I'll jump in before you do.
Sorry, go ahead.
I forget. Also, President Trump has also said that under the Trump administration, that any transgenders in the military will be either medically discharged, but will be there is no place for transgender ideology within the American military.
And unfortunately, I'm going to have to agree with that. The military, although it's open to everybody, not everybody's going to be able to get in. Okay, it's actually very difficult to get into the U.S. military from a medical perspective. I've seen people with flat feet get kicked out of the military, right? So, if that's going to kick you out of the military and you actually have a mental disorder that is registered in the DSM-5, then why would we continue to allow you to serve? And I'm sure some of these people are great, but there's plenty of other jobs out there where you can go work. But our primary duty in the U.S. military is to kill people and break things. And I know that sounds very, very broad and brush, but that's the way it is. And it's to ensure that the foreign policy of the United States is enacted and that our citizens are protected by doing so. And what I saw even on deployment was we had a transgender troop who tried to deploy with us, but because we couldn't support their medications in a combat zone, they were not allowed to deploy. Right. So if you are a transgender troop and you can't deploy and you can't do the job that you were assigned to, then why would you be in the U.S. military? Right. So it just comes down to, can you do the job? Are you meeting the requirements? And I feel for these people. They have a mental disorder and they need to, find who they are and, get right with whatever, they believe in. But at the end of the day, the military is exclusionary on purpose. And right now we need a merit-based military where the best of the best are allowed to serve. We need good pilots. We need guys who can drive tanks. We need guys who can drive naval ships and stop crashing them into islands and sinking them, which happened several weeks ago. We lost a Navy ship from a female commander who was a DEI select who was not qualified for that position, and we lost billions of dollars worth of. It was not good, right? So it's when the U.S. taxpayer is paying this amount of money into our Department of Defense, they expect the best of the best to be employed and to wear the uniform and represent our country well. And I think over the last few years we've slid on that because we do have actual threats. Iran is a huge threat. China's a threat. Russia's a threat. And if anyone's watched Ukraine develop over the last almost 3 years now, I'm sorry, but you need people who can fight, who can win, and can defend their country and save the world, right? And unfortunately, not everybody is qualified to do those jobs.
No. And not everybody has that mental mentality either to do that job. You have to have a certain, not just physical fitness, but you have to have a certain emotional and mental fitness to actually go to war. And
it's a difficult job. You have to have the mental fortitude. You have to have good, strong family connections. You have to have some kind of religious faith that you believe in. Because when the bullets start flying, there's no atheists in foxholes, so to speak, right? That's the common phraseology, right? And I promise you, terrorists and our near peer threat adversaries do not care about your feelings.
No,
they do not. So
they don't. They're not going to get offended. So they're not worried if you get offended.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You also mentioned Ukraine. our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister Micheál Martin, which surprised us all over the weekend, cancelled his meeting in Munich. I might have the wrong city, but was supposed to have a meeting with Zelensky, the Prime Minister of Ukraine. That was cancelled. And then Zelensky then comes out and says there should be a European army. A lot of people here in Ireland are saying no, because, we're neutral and we don't want our sons. I'm a military mommy, a mom, as you say over there. I don't want my son going out and fighting wars and getting shot for a war that is, is not affecting Ireland. But we're peacekeepers. But so there's a lot of nonsensical information coming out, isn't there?
No, absolutely. And this is a problem. It's like, everyone in the European Union has relied on the United States for their defense for decades, right? And with no offense, but without us, a lot of these countries would have crumbled and fell a long time ago. Especially after Bosnia-Herzegovina in the mid-90s and, that whole, I could talk about that for days. This is my job. I'm an intel analyst. Like, I'm a history nerd. If you don't understand what's going on now, read a couple history books, right? Get back our education system, which is why the Department of Education in the United States also needs to be shut down, because we've become worse off since that was implemented, not better. But getting back to Ukraine. Yeah, Ukraine is saying this because their army's not going to win. They are going to lose. And I said this from the first 2 weeks of the war when I was overseas watching it, is that Ukraine is not going to be able to hold this off. The only reason they were able to is because we shipped them a lot of weapons initially. But like I said, they cannot sustain. They do not have an actual well-trained professional army like the United States does, or the way Russia does. And they're going to have to acquiesce. They are going to have to make some kind of deal where, like I said, my theory that I said from the very beginning was that they are going to give up the eastern side of that country, the Luhansk and Donetsk region, back to Russia, which is mostly Russian citizens anyway, and that's how that's going to be settled. Russia is going to gain more territory out of it. That's just how it's going to go. They're going to get their warm water port access in the Black Sea and Mediterranean area, which is what Russia wants. And then they are going to be able to secure the trade routes over to Syria for the food supply into the Middle East, which is something we've discussed at large before. And they're going to get some things back. But I think one of the conditions of ending the war as well is that Zelensky is going to have to open up free elections again. They have shut down the election system in Ukraine since the war started, right? So I think the people of Ukraine should have the democratic right to decide who is going to be president and whether they want to continue this war, because millions of Ukrainians have died in this conflict. And I think they're getting tired, and they've lost their sons, they've lost their daughters, they've lost their families. And I think it's time for them to decide what they want to do moving forward. And we should not be continuing to warmonger and fight the Russian military machine, because you want to know what? It's not going to end. And if anyone knows anything about Russia, they were willing to lose 18 million people in World War II in order to beat the Nazis, right? So they're not even at that now. Russian people are very hard the way they fight. They don't have the best tactics. They don't have the best weapons, but they have a lot more people than Ukraine. And now that they have concentrated allies with North Korea and Iran and China, that is not a winnable situation for Ukraine. And that's why I fully support Donald Trump going in and making a deal, which he's going to. Like, it's a business trade deal. Like, hey, Ukraine, you're going to trade us rare earth minerals for your defense and for your rebuilding efforts. Like, that's my job. I'm civil affairs, right? So I anticipate my unit or our derivatives getting sent over to Ukraine to start rebuilding that infrastructure and everything else. And there's going to be a line drawn in the sand. And like I said, the enemy of the enemy is my friend. It's very Machiavellian. But it is in our best interest to be more friends with Russia than it is to oppose them. Because if you back them into a corner, they're going to create allies with our enemies that are actual threats. And our actual threats are China and Iran and all those other countries. And another great foreign policy thing that was enacted recently was that we are finally recognizing that India is relevant again. India is the most massively populated country, even more than China in the world right now. They have a lot of technology, they have a lot of military power, and they have nuclear weapons. And previously, we have disregarded India as a third world country previously in previous administrations. And we invited Modi over to the White House. There was a lot of great meetings with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the Secretary of Defense. And it's really good that we're reigniting that relationship with India, because it is so critical for the stability of Europe as well, because India is going to be able to oppose Russia and Chinese influence in the region. So I think it's we might not be best friends with Russia, but it's kind of like you want to keep them, disinterested from combining forces with Iran and China. And in a way to counter that, to secure Europe's safety and security, is to build that relationship with India, to make sure that Ukraine is settled and that they have a new president and that the corruption stops. Because even Zelensky admitted himself, all the money and weapons that were given to that country, he can't account for 50% of it. Where did it go? Right? And it's massive corruption and money laundering, right? So enough is enough. We need to stop the war. We need to stop the killing. But unfortunately, Ukraine is going to lose some of its territory, in my estimation, for this. But I think it's in the best interest to end this war as fast as possible. But continuing to supply Ukraine with more troops and more weapons, it's not going to end the war. It's just going to kill more people. And we're not going to get to a peaceful resolve with that kind of action. So.
Well, we can't hear you. You're bouncing.
Sorry, I'll repeat that. That's incredible. And Adam as well. There are a lot of confirmations that have gone through. Robert Kennedy Jr. is one. He got by. It was a tight vote in the end. I think Mitch McConnell actually crossed the floor and voted with the Democrats. But Robert Kennedy is now going to be the new Secretary for Health and Human Sciences.
Health and Human Services. Yep.
He's going to shake things up there.
No, I'm super excited about that because finally we'll have European food standards. I mean, your food tastes so much better because you don't have all these chemicals and, all these things that affect your health. And, anyone goes to Italy or Germany or Greece, like the food just tastes so much better. And it's great because it is poisoning our kids and it's poisoning our system and it's making us dumber as Americans. And we don't need any more dumb people in this country. Food and nutrition is so important to health and human, existence. And I'm really glad that somebody's going to take the lead on that and actually start correcting the pharmaceutical corruption in our country. Maybe we'll start advertising pharmaceuticals on the internet and all over our newscasting stations, right? Instead of, getting on Ozempic, why don't you just eat a healthy diet, right? It's poisoning our kids. It's poisoning our system. There's a lot of debates about vaccines and everything else, and we can talk about that. COVID obviously was massively corrupt and was a giant money-making scheme, but, there are good vaccines like polio and measles and things like that we need to keep those going in our country. I think everyone would agree with that because we've seen the effects of, millions of people dying in the past over that. But on top of that, like I said, we need to get rid of the pharmaceutical lobby. So like I said, fixing the military industrial complex, fixing the pharmaceutical lobby that's, caused fentanyl deaths and opioid addiction in our country we're at a critical threshold where that needs to be fixed. And then the next big confirmation that's coming up is Kash Patel for the FBI. The FBI has been so inundated with corruption in our country since 9/11 that it is finally, time for that to change. And we'll see what happens with his confirmation. I'm confident it's probably going to go down to the wire, just like every single confirmation that Trump has gone through right now. But as long as we can get these moral and ethical people in to fix the system and actually destroy what has destroyed our country and our moral fiber as humans, then, I am all for it. And even Pam Bondi getting in as the Attorney General of the United States. Pam Bondi is incredible. She is finally, charging these massively corrupt attorney generals in all these states who have conducted lawfare against our politicians and against our citizens, even like Catholic moms who are protesting at abortion clinics, which is our First Amendment right, putting 80-year-old women in jail. Like, what are we doing? This needs to stop. And they even made a deal with Eric Adams. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City, and he was under corruption investigation, and Donald Trump pretty much made an agreement with him. We'll drop the charges if you start working together with us on the illegal immigration issue in New York City. Bam. Once again, making business deals, stop clogging up our court systems, but the next thing that's going to really have to happen in this country is judicial reform. We're seeing so many corrupt Democratic judges who are political bias and not really serving under the Constitution, trying to stop Donald Trump and all his offices. They're all claiming like, oh, this is against the Constitution and this is against. No, it's not. Look up how executive orders work, right? If Congress isn't acting and judicial branches aren't doing these things, then we need to ensure that our president, the executive branch, is going to enforce that. And another thing that Trump can do as a strategy is, yes, the judicial branch might make a decision on a case, but the judicial branch has no authority to enforce it. So even though the judicial branch might come in and say, well, we don't agree that Donald Trump is shutting off payments to USAID. Okay, well, you're not going to enforce it. So Trump's just going to ignore it and just keep doing what he's doing. Yeah. And a lot of these judges need to be impeached and thrown out. So
another interesting one, that confirmation is that's going through as well. Hearing is Lyndon chair.
Oh, we lost you again there.
Yeah, sorry, you cut off there, Paul, a little bit.
Can you hear me now? Linda McMahon is the nomination for education.
Yeah, the Secretary of Education. So
Secretary of Education.
Hilarious. Yeah, that's hilarious because we all know that Donald Trump is going to end the Department of Education, and I think putting in a Vince McMahon's wife, who is the lead of the World Wrestling Federation, as a way of literally choke slamming the Department of Education and ending it is just hilarious. I mean, you even saw during her confirmation hearing all the rest of the pro wrestlers sitting behind her.
Yeah,
Like it was great, like Triple H and stuff.
her
Yeah, and
son-in-law.
yeah, and it's just kind of like Brandon Herrera is being considered for the director of the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Association. He's like, yeah, I hope they appoint me so I can make sure I put myself out of a job. They want to shut the department down, right? It's just I think Linda McMahon's going to go in there and start gutting the system, and if it can still exist under certain conditions, great. But I think the entire point of putting some of these very influential people into these positions is to shut the department down and end it and reform it. So.
Yeah. Well, am I correct in saying the only way the department could be completely abolished is by Congress?
Yes and no. So Congress enacted the Department of Education, but it doesn't say that the presidential authority can't shut it down and pull it. It can be reformed under something else, right? And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because Congress can say, oh, we're not going to shut it down. And the judicial system can say, well, we're not going to do that. But then Donald Trump, as the executive branch, has to enforce it. And if it's not enforced, we're just going to do it anyway. Right. It's kind of like all these people getting fired. It's like, you can't fire us. It's like, well, we just did and we cut off your pay. So good luck. Like, what are you going to do about it? So, and unfortunately, it's a very aggressive tactic, but because the system is so bloated and corrupt, it needs to be done. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, he's just going to pass so many executive orders and do things so quickly that they can't even keep up with him. And some of it might not all go through, but I'd rather see 75% of this stuff get approved than none of it. So,
I think too, it's really showcasing the corruption in the American government that then it's actually showcasing the corruption in every government internationally. It's like you talk about the Doge. You talk about the Doge. Well, we have that in Ireland, where we have the corruption within Irish government. When you think we had the bike shed, we had the what else? We had the
IT system for the Arts Council that doesn't work.
And now we have the Arts Council with the 7 million or something in the Arts Council. It's
right.
Crazy. So it's really showing up all the corruption worldwide in the government.
Well, maybe our Western allies will take some notes from Donald Trump and start enacting these things too. Hopefully it lights a fire under our allies that, hey, we need to start voting in aggressive people that want to make changes and start, reforming our own countries, because obviously they're all tied together. It's all massively corrupt. And, we claim to be the beacon of democracy, but by being the beacon of democracy, a lot of these countries have taken away the rights of so many of its citizens, and that needs to change. And I think America, we're leading from the front right now. And I hope that countries like Ireland and Germany and France start falling in line and that people start waking up to the corruption on this. So.
And you were talking earlier about the guests who are all flocking to the White House to meet Donald Trump. You also we're talking about the Middle East now. You also had the King of Jordan visit and his son visit the White House. But previous to that, you had the Queen of Jordan visiting the First Lady Melania Trump.
Yeah, and I've worked in Jordan, so I'm well aware of Abdullah II out there, right? And he's a very interesting character. They hate the Palestinians in Jordan. They don't want to say that out loud, but they do not like them. But unfortunately, when it comes to Gaza, this is a necessary evil at this point. There is nothing left in Gaza. It is not inhabitable, right? And none of those countries over there, minus maybe Saudi Arabia, are going to put in money to fix that place. So in the meantime, I don't agree with doing any military action. It's good training for our bomb guys to go in there and start defusing all the bombs and stuff, that have been laid out there by Hamas. But I think Donald Trump has a very interesting approach that it's never been done before. We're going to go in there and we're going to bulldoze it all. We're going to put up a Trump Tower. Like, I think it's hilarious. Like, I think it's funny. And if anyone actually looks back in like the 60s and 70s, what Gaza was like, it was a beautiful beachfront property like West Palm Beach, right? It was an idyllic.
It was a Playboy area of the Middle East.
Exactly. So it's like, what? How about this? You guys stop touching each other. We're going to come in and build a fence. We're going to do some construction. We're going to utilize our Army Corps of Engineers and our civil affairs guys to come in and build apartment complexes and get your water back and get your food system back in order. And then we're going to slowly hand it back to you, right? Because one thing I will say from a military perspective, one way to guarantee yourself civil war and conflict is to make sure that your people don't have access to clean water, food, and electricity or energy, right? So if we go in there and we give millions of Palestinians jobs, water, electricity, and food, and sit there and go, so you want to blow your own house up now again still? You sure you want to do that? They're probably not going to. And could it fail? Absolutely. But I think it's a much better solution than having a permanent Israeli occupation, because that'll never go over well. It's much better than forcefully relocating Palestinians into other countries that don't want them, such as Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, right? So it's giving a state that's not technically, I mean, whether it's going to be recognized or not, I don't know. That's a whole other debacle, right? But giving at least a safe place for people to raise their kids, have food, energy, and water, and sit there and go, now, if you screw this up, that's on you, right?
Yeah.
But giving them the opportunity to live in safety, away from terrorist influence. Because the reason why these terrorists are so successful in those areas is because they give them a job for $40 a month to go kill Israelis, because they have another choice. They have nothing to do. Israel's not going to give them a job. They can't go farm because all their farmland's complete wasteland. They have nothing to lose. So these people get desperate. So if you give them an economic living situation that gives them an advantage of peace and prosperity, and then give them the keys and sit there and go, start over, we're watching, but don't screw this up, terrorists will have much less of an influence on those areas if they're able to raise their families and live in peace. So
A bit like the North. I'm from Derry, I'm from the North, and it was a bit like that in the 80s. And it was the poverty, it was but once then the financial America, again, it was America that helped invest. Although I'm not a great fan now of the Clinton Foundation or the Clintons or the administration, but there was, like I said, there's a lot to come out about that in history as well, about the North and everything. But we had the Good Friday Agreement, and that was down to economics. But I do think, I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Saudi Arabia in the 80s. So, it's nice to see that the other Arab states, as you said, they don't like the Palestinians, but other Arab states never did anything to help the create peace in the Beirut. I had a lot of Beirut Lebanese friends from Beirut, and it was such a beautiful country.
And I think the way that Trump is going to play this is like, look, none of you like the Palestinians. We get it. But if you all contribute, say, 10% of the total cost of the rebuilding of Gaza, right? Because we don't want to pay for it. We'll do the construction to make sure that it's built safely without terrorist tunnels and everything else. But if all you Arab countries fund this initiative, we will ensure that it's done correctly. We'll be a peacekeeping force for a small period of time to get these people back on their feet. And then we'll hand it back over to them. And that way, they're not going to be permanent residents in your country. But for the time being, they're going to have to. Like, there's going to have to be some agreement like, hey, let them live in tents for like 2 years in the sand over here, which is what they do anyway. And let us fix this place up. And then when it's all done, they all move back. And we'll do that under the condition of you help fund this entire operation, right? And I think it's an interesting strategy. It's never been done before with any success. So it'll be very interesting to see if this is actually going to work. It could totally fail, but it's never been done before. And I think if we just keep repeating the same cycles over and over again in Israel and in Gaza, we're going to be right back to where we started just within a few years. So.
Oh, it really is. When you break it down, Adam, it is something that hasn't been tried before. So it could either, as you said, it could either be very, very successful, or it could fail. But hopefully it does work, because
yeah. I mean, if you were living in a war-torn country, half your family got killed, you had no house, no food, no job, and then someone comes in there and gives all that stuff back to you with the agreement of handing over the keys, going, all right, so if you stop blowing each other up, you get a free house and you get a job and you can live here in peace and raise your kids. Would you do it? I'm going to go with yes. I would say yes, especially since, you lived in the Middle East. Some of these people are extremely desperate, very, very poor. It's the best thing that you can give them versus just giving a bunch of money to USAID to throw bags of rice over a boat. That's not solving anything. And then you get warlords who are stealing money and stealing economic aid. And then you get all these fake NGOs that go in there and money launder for their own intuition, funnel it back to the DNC, which is why it's never worked, right? Same thing with Somalia in the early 90s. We went in there with Farrar Aidid, and he was stealing all the food that the UN was transporting in there. And then even the fact that we gave billions of dollars of economic aid to Somalia, that country is still a giant crater of human cesspool suffering, right? So this is a different way of doing it, and it's never been done before. And it's like, would it cost some money up front? Absolutely. Would it be some American involvement and probably some NATO or UN involvement on this? Yes, absolutely. But if this is what fixes the situation, because it's never been done before, why not try it?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Absolutely. And get out of my head. And Elon Musk, who's the who is the head of the Doge. Um, you know, I'm sure that the amount of wastage that they have found to date is incredible, and I'm sure lots more is going to come out as well about the waste in other departments.
I mean, we've only been through just like 5 departments, and we've already found like $2 trillion in waste. Our country's in $36 trillion worth of debt, and we already found 2 trillion of it. Can you imagine what happens if we go through the entire system? I bet we pay off our entire national debt in under 4 years without having to raise taxes if we do this the right way, right? It is insane. And not only that, if we do that and we increase, the wages for American workers and decrease taxes and all these other things, it benefits all our allies because then more Americans will travel. They'll have more money. We'll stop all this corrupt spending. We'll get NATO figured out. We'll reinvigorate the UN, and we'll make everyone else fall in line and into compliance with those things. And that's what it comes down to, is that yes, America is probably the wealthiest country in the world. We have lots of great stuff, but we can be so much better if we stop wasting everybody's money, because that money also comes from our allies too, right? Like Irish businesses, they pay tariffs and taxes, and so it goes back and forth. So if the American people are going to benefit and we can reduce the fraud, waste, and abuse, it'll also reduce the fraud, waste, and abuse for all our allied countries in Europe as well. So
Exactly, and St. Patrick's Day is only what 4 weeks away. But by the time we're recording it now on the 17th of February, there's seems to be a big push, particularly on our side of the pond. Both our Prime Minister, Taoiseach Micheál Martin, will will be in Washington for St. Patrick's Day, and also our Minister for Defence and Foreign Affairs, Simon Harris. He will also be in United States as well for St. Patrick's Day, and a couple of other ministers as well. There seems in Ireland we are making a big push to make friends with Donald Trump.
you should. It's a good idea. I don't recommend working against the Don. It never works out in your favor. You lose your security clearance and you get fired. And that's the way it should be, right? I mean, he's the president. Get over it. He's doing great things for the American people right now, whether you want to believe it or not. And it's going to benefit the world. It's not just going to benefit the United States. But like I said, we have to fix our country first before we can help and fix everything else. And I think if we can fix the books, get our accounting system back up, and then actually see the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that's in our country, then that just goes hand in hand with the prosperity of everyone around the world. So,
And also, with what the President Donald Trump and the Trump administration and the Trump force is doing, is they're actually setting integrity back into politics. And
yeah,
it's also putting back to politicians being about representing your people, not representing big corporate. And that therefore should inspire the other citizens of every other country to say to their government, you should be copying what Donald Trump is doing. You should be, for example, to our government, you should be making Ireland great again. You should be looking after Ireland's interests and bringing back industries to Ireland as well. So that's a very good positive.
no, 100%. And this is why the next election cycle for 2026 is so critical. If Donald Trump can successfully route out a massive amount of corruption here in the next 18 months, it's going to motivate Americans to actually get out and vote out the rest of them. We voted out a bunch of them here in 2024, but it's not over yet. Like the Mitch McConnells, they all need to go. The Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers, all these massively corrupt people that have been involved in politics for 20, 30 years. And that's why I work directly with the America First Veterans Foundation. I just got nominated to be the national vice chairman, so I'm really excited about that. So not only am I the president of the state of Colorado, I'm now the national vice chairman. And our objective is for the next 18 months is we are going to fundraise to help good candidates actually run for office. Because the problem is you need money to run for office. And a lot of the good, ethical, moral people in this country, they can't afford $50,000 or $2 million to run for office. Right. And that's why all these super corrupt people that are paid off by these corporations get voted in as senators and congressmen and mayors and county commissioners and everything else. Right. So if we can give them a voice and give them some funding with this new initiative we're running with the America First Veterans Foundation and run our own PAC, then we'll be able to get moral and ethical people in to run the race against these people. Because like I said, man, some of these people that are in our government are dumb. They are not smart people. I mean, there's some good ones. I've talked to them, but there's a lot of bad ones, right? And the guys I work with on a daily basis could run this country 20 times better than what's currently running it now. So if I can empower them to run for office and take part in their government, then Donald Trump's initiatives are going to be even more successful for 27 and 28, right? But we need to make sure that the election, like the game starts now, the work starts now. And that's what I was, when I had to travel home last week because my grandmother passed away. She's 100 years old, right?
Sorry.
But
Sorry to
while
hear
I was there, I appreciate that. But she lived 100 years. She lived a great life. She had 11 grandkids, 18 great grandkids. Like she's the pinnacle of what America needs to be, right? But even then, I took a meeting at Donald Trump's tower in New York City, and I met with these guys. And there's so much motivation. There's so much money pouring in to make sure that we can get good candidates in Georgia and Colorado and Nevada and Washington State and California. And we're doing that work now. We're interviewing candidates to set themselves up to start running for office here in less than probably 6 to 12 months, because the fight is not over. Just because Donald Trump won the presidency in 2024 does not mean that work is over. And we need to take our election seriously. And I think Americans are finally waking up to they can make a difference in their government if they actively participate and don't just sit on the sidelines and complain on Facebook all day. So,
Would you be one of those candidates, Adam? I know we spoke about
I haven't decided that yet. So for
not
me,
a no.
I would never run for office for myself. I would only run for office if a bunch of people in my community asked me to run and supported me for doing it, because I'm not in this for myself. I'm in this for the people that I serve. Same reason I joined the military, same reason I was a firefighter and EMT for years, right? And but even if it doesn't pan out that way, I have no problem finding those candidates and supporting them in the background as a political operative to help them. Because my main objective is to get married and have kids, right? It's very hard to do that as a politician, and I don't want to put that on my future family here. But if I can help get good people into office, I will. And even if at a lower level, even running in the county or something like that at a lower level in Colorado, I have no problem doing that. But the problem is that there's so much corruption. Even in my own county, we were uncovering a massive embezzlement scheme with oil and gas companies and denying permits and stuff. And this is my industry. So one really good way to tick me off is to go after my job. That's what pays my bills, right? And right now I'm working with several people here on the local level to rat out that corruption and make sure that even our local state representatives, local state senators, local county commissioners are removed from office here in the 2025 and 2026 elections here in Colorado, right? So, that's why I'm hated so much out here in Colorado. It's very contentious. It's because they have this guy and his group of people coming in who are moral, ethical business leaders and community leaders, and they're trying to replace the establishment. And that even goes on the same side of the Republican Party. There's a lot of people in the Republican Party that are more corrupt than some of the Democrats I've worked with, which is a very strong statement, but I mean it when I say it. And, that's why I said it's so important for even people at the local level to get involved, because your local elections really matter. Your school boards and everything else really do matter about raising your kids and family. And like I said, it's great that Donald Trump was elected, but at the end of the day, the president of the United States really has no effect on your local life, your local taxes, and your home and your family. So,
you just reminded me, I was watching something on TikTok. Now, I'm very new to TikTok. I don't know how to work it, so I'm very new.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a video with President Reagan. And in it, he said, I think I sent it to you, Paul. I think he said that if the people, what was
You
it? He
did,
said
indeed,
something,
you did,
the
you did.
people don't need politicians. And if people got together and the government went away for 3 months, that the ordinary people would sort out all the problems. And there's something about, and there's another thing I noticed about Ronald Reagan. President Trump has his portrait of President Reagan right in center of all, right in the Oval Office.
Yep. And then right in the hallway, when you walk in for the press room, is his framed picture of him with his mugshot. It's great. It's hilarious, right? It's so funny. But no, it's true. Is that if you had 50 people like me, we could run the entire state of Colorado. Like, I don't need all these corrupt politicians. And here's another thing I've changed my perspective on over the last probably 18 months working with the Trump administration. We never really wanted these rich, wealthy businessmen running our country, right? We don't want the Elon Musk. We don't want the Donald Trumps, all these rich businessmen. You know what? After 18 months, I've changed my mind on that. Is because when you have poor people who are easily influenced by money running for office, they are easily corruptible, right? So if I have this Joe Blow regular guy running for office who is desperate for money, all the super PAC money that comes in, he's going to do exactly what those people say when he gets into office, right? So they become puppets to the government. But if you get successful business leaders who don't need money, right, and they're vetted at least, because there are some corrupt businessmen, don't get me wrong, but if you have a bunch of so-called Elon Musks or Donald Trumps or something like that who are in powerful positions who can't be paid off, who actually just want to work for the betterment of the American people and bettering of businesses and bettering of their local economies and communities. That's why the Democrats are fighting so hard against these people, is because you can't corrupt them. You can't pay off Elon Musk. He's the richest man in the world. You can't. So whatever lobbying group comes in and offers $100 million, or pharmaceutical companies come in to $200 million for all these opioid drugs, if you pass this bill, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So this is why I encourage successful business leaders or veterans who have small businesses. That's why we want to support them with the super PAC money that we're going to try to raise, on the America First Veterans Group, is because don't worry about the money. You don't need to worry about the money. We'll give you the money you need to run for office. You just need to be ethical and moral in all the decisions and votes that you make. And we don't want you to be paid off by all these companies and lobbyist groups. We want you to just be an American and vote for your communities and do the right thing. And man, it is upsetting the established order here in the United States. It is amazing the amount of kickback that we get with that. So
Yeah, that kind of reminds me I think Robin Williams told a joke once that politicians should wear the jackets like the NASCAR drivers, because
exactly.
they have all NASCAR drivers. You see all their different logo, who sponsor them. He said they should wear that. See who.
And
who
unfortunately, that is the truth for probably 80% of the politicians in America, is that they're bought and paid for, right? So let's put people into office that can't be bought off, right? And if that means you're a millionaire and you're a successful business person, but you're being asked to serve your local community because you're a moral, ethical businessman who's provided jobs and done the right thing, then those are the people that should be in office. And I'm hoping that, especially when the election season really kicks off, is term limits, right? Is that these people are term limited and they can't serve in Congress or the Senate for 40 years. That they come in for their 2 to 6 years of employment, they do their best, and then we continue to elect younger, middle-aged people to keep that system going. Because if I have 80-year-olds running my country, right, who are already on Social Security, who have nothing to lose, they're not going to vote for what's best for the people. They're only going to vote what's best for them. And we need to ensure that we have a constant revolving door of moral and ethical Americans that are constantly filling in the needs of the current American population. And then they're not going to be bought and sold off by all these lobbyist groups and corporations. So
fascinating.
I always think here in Ireland, you talk about, the younger people coming through. I've always wondered, has that been the demise of Ireland, with Leo Varadkar being so young, the Irish Taoiseach, and then with Justin Trudeau, everybody thought, oh my God, these young people coming in, they're running the country. Sure, everything went downhill. Even the Prime Minister of New Zealand as well. They were all trendy, they were young. But sure, then look what happened.
So here's the problem with those people, is that they were bought and paid off before they even entered the system, right? They're not like Trudeau or all these other young people I'm talking about. And I see this in Colorado, right? For example, we had a 22-year-old that was just elected as the county chairman in Colorado, right? No business acumen, no life experience whatsoever. But who is he bought and paid for by? The old establishment rule, right? So all the people who are 80 are telling this kid what to do, and they put on this facade that, oh, we have these younger people that are coming in, but they're the only reason they're doing it is because they are guaranteed a political position of power as long as they do what the establishment wants. And we don't want those people in either, right? I want younger people in, but that's why I said that we don't need the 22-year-olds, because you haven't done anything yet. No offense. When I was 22, I thought I knew everything. I don't know anything. All right. I'm 37 and I don't know anything now. Right. So we need younger people for sure, but I'm talking like the middle age, like late 20s, mid 40s, even 50s region, right? Where you've had experience, you've raised a family, you've raised kids, you've failed, you've succeeded, you've served in the military, you've done these things, so you got some credibility behind you. But we want to make sure, because the super young people that get put into office are bought and paid for by the establishment. We don't want those either, right? And the super old people that have been in forever have been bought and paid for decades. We need the people that are already successful business leaders, family leaders in the middle of the road, that are the best representation of the population for the United States or any other country. And that's what we need to emphasize as well. So just be like Jasmine Crockett, for example. That lady has no idea what she's talking about. She is in the state of Florida. And this lady claims to be a judge, but she can't even quote what the first preamble is in the Constitution. It's like, give me a break, but somehow she's in Congress because she was bought and paid for and put into that position as a political favor to ensure that those policies that those lobbyists came in for are enacted, right? So there's two sides to that coin, just like you mentioned, right? And that's why we need people who can't be bought and paid for, who are experienced, who are right in the middle of the road, that actually know what's going on in America and represent the population as a whole and really institute that constitutional democracy.
Yeah. Well, God, Adam, we're coming up to nearly the end of the hour. Is there any message that you, as a Irish American correspondent, what message would you give to us citizens here in Ireland watching this?
Buckle your seatbelts, kids, because it's going to be a ride. I would say that until Trump is done with his first 100 days and then went into the first year of the administration, you're going to see a lot of rapid changes. I can't even anticipate or, foretell as a fortune teller what's going to happen here. But I think the revamping of America here this year is going to pay dividends to our allies overseas. And I would ask that, yes, you can call Trump a racist or all the other, like the Canadians did, but just don't boo us at hockey games. It doesn't work out well for you. I don't think Ireland has a hockey team, so I think you're fine.
Oh, no, we're good there.
But the thing is that, yes, we are upsetting the established order. We are upsetting a lot of people because there's such rapid change. But I think this rapid change is necessary in order to benefit everyone around the globe. And I'm looking forward to world peace. I'm looking forward to people being able to go on vacation again and afford groceries. And I'm sure we'll reconvene here in a few weeks and talk about all the new changes and new appointments. And I'm excited that you guys keep bringing me on. It's such an absolute pleasure to be able to talk to the people of Ireland about these things. So
Yeah,
Well,
it's
we're
brilliant.
curious
Brilliant to
as well.
chat to you as well, Adam.
Yeah. We're as curious and excited as well because we're getting to hear an American perspective on the ground and involved in the politics and in the ground at grassroots level and in Washington in the lobbying area, especially with your military background. I think because Ireland, we're very proud of our defense forces, but it's gone really downhill. So, but also, I keep telling everybody, Adam, what you said to us in our very first interview. Everybody's all about tariffs, trade war. No. And everybody keeps saying, oh, Donald Trump's going to do this. And I go, no, the tariffs is all about trade negotiations.
Yep.
And that's what the tariffs are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I encourage all your followers. You can follow me on Instagram. It's adam.DeRito, DERITO 2010. And you have to look it up specifically because I'm still shadow banned by Mark Zuckerberg from speaking out against the Biden administration. You can follow me on LinkedIn, and then my website's adamderito.com, and you can follow the efforts I do with the Leatherwood Development Group out there for political influencing, political consulting, and the Dark Saber podcast and Tuxes and Tomahawks podcast, which hopefully I'll be back on a regular schedule here since things are starting to slow down a little bit, and I can actually start doing more interviews and stuff. But yeah, you can follow me there, get in contact with me. Happy to answer any questions, and looking forward to our next interview.
Yeah. Well, Adam DeRito, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, because you are a busy man, to come and talk on the Irish Political Roundup to the Irish audience.
It's my pleasure.
Thank
Until
you.
next time.
Thank you, Adam.